Hello and warm welcome to the We Don't Have Time Climate Hub. Coming live to you here from Baku, from the COP Conference of the Parties. And we're on our 5th day of broadcasting, and we're right next to the Caspian Sea, and we're having a great time here at the studio interviewing lots of guests.
We've got a wonderful series of conversations lined up for you today. We're going to hear about the exponential solutions that must be applied to phasing out fossil fuels in the very short time available and left. And Katerina will be hosting an absolutely fascinating discussion on China's role in solving the climate crisis.
But before we continue, I'd like to turn to Ingmar Renskog, the CEO and co-founder of We Don't Have Time. What are your impressions so far from the COP?
My impression is both very optimistic, positive, and quite pessimistic. and now I'm not talking about the negotiations because they are kind of in the dark. We don't really know yet how that is going. I'm talking about like the mood here on the ground. And I start with the pessimistic. I was speaking at a finance panel yesterday with a lot of impact investors in the room. I usually ask this question that do you believe that we're going to be able to halve the emission before the year 2030? That's what we need to do according to science to be on the safe side of tipping points. And currently we're kind of flattening out in the year 2024, so we don't have many years left to achieve this halving, but it's not impossible. And in a room full of more than 100 investors focusing on impact, only 2 people raised their hands. I don't understand how you can invest in something if you don't believe that it will succeed. That is kind of a little bit contradicting. Of course we can and must achieve this, and that's the positive news. I were yesterday in a room where Al Gore and Governor Jane Inslee, Washington governor, and they were fired up. No matter if Donald Trump entered the White House, the green transition in US are unstoppable. And they got this enormous applause from the audience while saying that. So maybe Donald Trump can achieve what he did last time he was elected. He can mobilize people to fight harder, because we need to fight harder. 2 hands in a room of 100 investors believing in the future they invest in is not fighting hard. So I really would like to give some commercial about watching this Al Gore session. We will air it at the end of today's broadcast. Don't miss that, because you want to be empowered by Al Gore and Jay Inslee. And it's also Innovation Day today. So they presented not just that they were fired up talking about climate action, they actually presented concrete solution where there's a new data page where we can see exactly where all the emissions are happening in real time. Everything from carbon dioxide to pollution to methane. And regarding methane, we have our own campaign here that's called Buy More Time. And that campaign is a concrete solution on how we can achieve this halving goal by not only focusing on carbon dioxide, but also focusing on the short-lived climate gases. So if you're curious about Buy More Time, and if you want to raise your hand next time someone like me asks the question if we're going to make it, go to wedon'time.org/buymore-time.
Thank you, Ingmar.
Yeah, super. So as many people know who have been watching our shows since the beginning of COP29, we're placing a special emphasis on methane and a campaign that we've called Buy More Time. And we're trying to basically encourage people to understand but also get involved in the fact that if we can really cut back the emissions of methane very quickly right now, we might stand a chance of halving emissions by 2030. So,
would you like to add anything, Ingmar, just about the Buy More Time campaign?
I think I said it all, but I can just add that focusing on short-lived climate gases, why is that so important? Because the difference between long-lived climate gases like carbon dioxide and short-lived, long-lived climate gases, if you put them up there, they will be up in the atmosphere for up to 1,000 years. So if the only way to get the temperature down is to remove them, that is insanely costly, and we don't have it scalable yet. and we really can't afford put down everything we have put up there. But for short-lived climate gases, such as methane, that is the biggest problem, if you stop emitting it, it will disappear from the atmosphere in just a couple of years by itself. So we don't need to remove short-lived climate gases. We just need to put it up there. And the thing with methane is that it's kind of easy to get rid of it. And it's not that expensive. We just need to focus on it. And what the Buy More Time campaign is all about is to initiate something similar to the Montreal Protocol in the UN system that saved humanity for the ozone crisis. Now we can save humanity again. So let's do it again. You will have more information about this on the We Don't Time website, and you will hear more about this subject throughout our broadcast.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Ingmar. Let's move on.
So one of the great things about coming to these climate conferences is that you actually bump into interesting people, and you want to, if you have a chance, put them on the We Don't Have Time stage. And that is the case with our next guest. We'd like to welcome to the studio Piyush Jha, who is from Mumbai in India. Piyush, you came to our studios to explain that there is a horrific tragedy, in a sense, happening in the slums in Mumbai in India, where you live. Tell us what that is briefly, and then tell us, you got some ideas about how to fix this. So, yeah, a little bit what the problem is, but mainly, how do you think we can fix it?
Okay, so thank you so much for this opportunity. Growing up in the slums of Mumbai, I have experienced a devastating impact of wastewater in my life. And I have experienced that diseases like cancer, typhoid, dengue, malaria, and the list goes on and on. And every year, like the global 6.2 billion of wastewater is generated. And there are no perfect solution for this wastewater, because industries are adopting the solutions that are not beneficial to the environment, and they are just bypassing the governments and the compliances with bribes. And my solution is to treat the wastewater and also generate electricity and hydrogen through that wastewater, so that the industry should also get benefit, and also they should adopt sustainable practices and technologies in their industries, so that our planet should be sustainable and greener and more healthier for our future generations. Thank you.
And have you raised this idea with your with the people in the slums where you are, and maybe even the city or some people in authority?
Yes, from the age 10, when I was 10 years old, from that time I am raising awareness through community campaigns, the place I am living it, and also in the school I was. So I was creating an awareness through social medias and also on the ground level, because explaining people on the ground level is a crucial part, so that even they can understand the problem what is going through their surroundings.
So this is the thing, isn't it? One person's waste is another person's opportunity to do something useful with it.
Yes.
And you want to do something useful with this waste. The main thing is it has to be clean, doesn't it? Somebody has to clean it up so you can use the energy of the water to create green energy. Okay, we've just got a couple of more minutes. Do you have colleagues and friends involved in this? Do you have supporters to get this done?
So our project, our startup, is supported by B Visionaries, the Mercedes-Benz Fellowship, and also supported by Emergent Venture. And also many of my friends are supporting this, supporting my project, because it's for a good cause. And also I'm working with different NGOs. Through their support, I am spreading my solution and also my voice to millions of Indians, and I want that the uh, the methane gas that is so much taken the importance in this COP29.
Yeah.
Uh, so every year globally 512 megatons of methane is produced just by the wastewater, and 7% of the methane is covered in the wastewater. So I want to solve that issue.
You're absolutely right. You put your finger on it there. You can harvest that methane as a relatively clean gas, and that people can use for cooking or other things like that, rather than it going into the atmosphere and causing climate change from that wastewater. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yes.
So this is really good indeed. I'm glad that you're a fan of We Don't Have Time. And please follow us, and
Sure.
also write to us and communicate with us how you're doing with your project. We'd love to hear from you, and
Sure.
thanks so much for coming by to our
Yeah.
offices.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir,
you.
for giving me this opportunity. Yes.
Excellent. Let's move on. So we've got 4 terrific guests right now, and one of them's just a little bit late, so we'll welcome him onto the show anyway. Hello, Peter. So, as mentioned earlier, our focus at the moment for We Don't Have Time during this COP29 here in Baku by the Caspian Sea is a lot on methane. Perhaps because it seems the world is waking up to the possibility that methane is not only a huge potential problem for climate change, but is also perhaps a way of, if we can accelerate reducing the emissions, getting us maybe to halving of emissions by 2030. As the British climate minister said, the methane is the sprint and the carbon dioxide is the marathon. So it's not a bad analogy. We're going to look today at waste, because when we look at methane, we look at the oil and gas industry and what is coming from that industry, from leaks or intentional discharges or whatever. We look at agriculture, which is probably the most highest emitter of methane. And we also look at coal mines as well, which we were looking at the other day. But the second one, classed as the biggest emitter, are waste, and also landfills if you put them together, according to the International Energy Agency. The first guest I'd like to introduce is Charlotte Morton, who's the CEO of the World Biogas Association and an officer of the Order of the British Empire. I also would like to introduce Mariel Villela, who is Global Climate Program Director at Gaia, that's the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives. Berliana Youssef, a Senior Analyst at the Climate Policy Initiative, and a dear friend as well, Peter Derry, former Chair of the United Nations Environment Programme's Climate and Clean Air Coalition, Co-Chair, and Director of Ghana's Climate Division. Thank you very much all for being here. It's a tight-packed program. We've got 30 minutes, so we have to be very surgical about our answers. But Charlotte, I have to ask you the dummies question, right? Which is, what is biogas? Where does it come from? I think we could spend a few hours on that, I think, looking at the list. But anyway, and who uses it?
Well, let me start by framing that in the context of the organic waste that we humans are generating around the world. We humans are generating around 105 billion tons of organic wastes every year. And so we're talking here about our own sewage, food waste, animal manures and slurries, other commercial food and drink processing wastes, and agri-wastes. As this material breaks down, which is a natural biological process, we also anaerobically digest our own food, it releases methane.
Okay.
Methane is a mixture of CO2 and, biogas is a mixture of CO2 and methane. So that is what is being released as this organic material breaks down.
Right. And you can harvest this, and it's all kinds of organic waste. It might be food waste, it might be dung, it could be straw on a farm, perhaps, I don't know. there's all kinds of organic waste out there, right? And so in many, many different countries there might be different kinds of organic waste, but it can be harvested, or anaerobic digestion, harvest the methane and put it to a good purpose, better than sticking it up in the atmosphere and causing global warming.
Well, that's right. So methane being released as this material breaks down, if it's not treated, is a problem. But if we collect all that organic material, these organic wastes, and recycle them through anaerobic digestion and complementary technologies into biogas, biomethane, and natural biofertilizers, we're turning this waste into really valuable products that we all need. So just taking one, the energy side, we're all aware of the fact that energy security has become more of an issue following the invasion of Ukraine. Well, all of that organic material actually contains around 1/3 of today's global gas consumption. So it's valuable stuff, as well as the NPK, the nutrients that are essential for future food production. So it's a fantastic opportunity for us both to solve a problem of methane going into the atmosphere and turning that into very valuable products that we need. In the process, it's a wonderful economic opportunity because this will create around 10 to 15 million new green jobs all around the world and has numerous other benefits, including health benefits, because these wastes do present problems if they're not treated.
Right. Stay with us. We'll go into a little conversation at the end of this, and we'll ask a bit about the COP and what's happening here. Mariel, I mean, a lot of organic waste ends up going to landfills in many countries where it rots, breaks down and produces methane that then goes up into the atmosphere. I think Gaia, who you represent, are in a sense representing the voice of all those 20 million, in many ways, waste pickers, mainly in developing countries, I presume, but maybe there are some also in developed countries, who are basically trying to remove waste materials to stop them going in the first place to landfills, including organic waste. And tell me, or tell the audience, how do we make them even more empowered, in a sense, to be a defense against methane pollution into the atmosphere? How can we make the waste pickers of this world be empowered to and encouraged to do even more to help everybody?
Yes, thank you for this very important question. So waste pickers are the de facto recycling system in the global south. In many places where there is no collection, there is no infrastructure, waste pickers are making a living recovering the natural resources that we find in waste that are recoverable, that still have a use in society or to industry, and they are effectively recycling. That includes organic waste, that includes other kinds of waste. And normally they are suffering appalling conditions, and they are often suffering marginalization and discrimination. But in those places where they have had the appropriate support, they have been able to organize, build cooperatives, build organizations that are able to provide a proper service to the city, and this implies like big cities, hundreds of houses that have door-to-door collection managed by waste pickers. So it's very important to support the organization of waste pickers in those places and then make sure that in any intervention in the waste sector, any decision-making that happens in the waste sector, they are included on the table. They are included from the very beginning of designing what intervention is going to happen to solve the waste crisis, because they are really the climate heroes. They are already saving the emissions. They are creating jobs. They are really giving a solution to people. They are improving the waste management sector in those cities, making them cleaner, and really putting the people in the front line of this solution.
I suppose also, in a sense, if they're collecting the organic waste, it's either going to be composted or it might be going into biogas systems, which is providing important energy to local people that maybe are off-grid or have no chance to get an electricity supply, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely. There is places where we see the waste pickers handling composting, and producing compost and selling it and
Yep.
returning this fertilizer to the soil and making
Yeah.
a really good connection to agroecology and food systems. That is definitely a virtuous circle.
Yeah.
But also in many places they are handling small-scale biogas plants. In
Mhm.
India there's plenty of those examples.
Mhm.
And this is definitely the solutions that need appropriate support, that need finance, that need scaling up.
Yeah.
The implementation of these solutions could handle up to 95% of the anthropogenic methane emissions in the waste sector.
Wow.
And this is really the solution. This is
Yeah.
really the future. This is where the finance needs to go.
Okay, stay with us. Let's now go to Berlinia. So you're working, but the microphones sound a bit quiet, but that's because we can't turn up this too loud, because then all the journalists over there would start screaming and yelling and running over and wrestling us to the ground. So, but the quality is very good going out. Tell us about the economics of this sector through the lens perhaps of Indonesia. You've been working, you're from the Climate Policy Initiative, that's an economic assessment organization, very good one. What have you found when you assess the economics of this in Indonesia?
Okay, so actually we are doing the study together with Gaia, study cases in two places, in Bandung, Indonesia, and also Brazil. So we found that like in general, like the business models, they are treat the waste at source and also like medium size, medium scale, has a competitive advantage in terms of cost. So they have lower costs compared to other business models, such as like if you treat it in the landfill or like big projects, because they do not require like transport and also like collection costs. So in this case, the economic of scale doesn't seem to like applied, because the bigger the scale, it's the bigger the transport cost and handling costs. So yeah, based on our analysis, financial analysis, if you provide funding for with the same amount of budget, you can actually provide the funding to the community groups or like waste picker cooperatives, or involve a community for doing like public home composting, and the overall cost would be much cheaper. And also there are also other co-benefits, such as, you know, when they do the composting, as Mariela has already mentioned, they get the compost and they can do like urban farming, and they can get fresh vegetable, and also with the less transport there will be less emission. So those kind of co-benefits are not included yet in our analysis, but even without including it, it's already cost competitive compared to the conventional method.
So that's
such as
absolutely very interesting indeed, but I bet there's lots of large corporations around the world with machinery to collect this that want to displace the waste pickers, even if they are more economic. So as economies grow, you get this move in from the big industrial conglomerates, perhaps. So how do you keep those at bay? And you have to give the waste pickers a perspective of their jobs, yeah?
Yeah, sure. So that's also, I mean, because the current focus of COP is climate finance, right? So the strategy at the moment is mostly like funding like the big projects, you know, through banks like that. And we found that actually, you know, we spoke to banks as well. So banks require like certain certainty, right, in terms
Securities,
of certainty in terms of cash flows. So in the case for like community groups and also cooperatives, we found that there are no supports from the government at the moment. So some community groups, they even put their own money, because the operating expense is, you know, higher than the revenue from, you know, selling the compost, and there are no government support of public funding provided, or even there is, it's very lacking.
Right. So this has to be addressed.
Yes.
Absolutely. Peter, Ghana. It's a big country. It's a beautiful country. It's on the west coast of Africa. Are you working on the waste side of things? Is this part of your NDC, your National Climate Action Plan, to try and reduce emissions from the waste sector?
Yes. For us as a country, the waste sector is the second largest contributor to GHG emissions. And so the waste sector for us is very critical if we have to meet our NDC targets. And what we have done is, as part of the revision process for NDC 3.0, we have initiated a process to revise our SLCP action plan, which included methane. And so that revision is going to set new targets when it comes to the methane sector. Basically, methane in Ghana comes from landfills, comes from agriculture. And agriculture here, I'm talking about from crop residue and also from animal droppings, and also oil and gas. These are the three sectors. And all of these, the waste sector is the commonest, because anywhere you pass, anywhere you go in country, you find a landfill. And the simple reason is because we have both structural and non-structural issues to address. There are issues relating to regulation, institutional arrangements. For example, there is no single coordinating institution that's responsible for waste management in Ghana. We don't have a waste agency. Waste management is left to the municipalities, but we do not have an agency that coordinates them. Even though we have a ministry for sanitation and water, we do not have an implementing agency for that ministry. So there are non-structural issues. And then the structural issues basically has to do with infrastructure. We do not have engineered landfills. We do not have enough logistics for transportation of waste. And so mostly when it comes to picking of waste is done by the informal sector. And you just talked about waste pickers. It's very common in Ghana. You find tricycles all over picking waste because these big waste trucks are not enough to be available all the time. And so waste definitely is a big problem and has to be part of our NDC so that we have a very conscious focus towards addressing waste. And globally, it has been established clearly that we cannot meet the 1.5 target without dealing with waste management or methane in general. Let me say methane in general. And waste management for us in developing countries is the key issue. You would have countries that are dealing with oil and gas, but for every country there is waste. It's not same for oil and gas. Oil and gas, there are some countries that do not have that resource. But when it comes to waste, virtually every country has waste. So waste for us is very critical, and we see that also play out in our neighboring countries. So we hope to set new targets in the NDC 3.0 for waste, and we hope to increase ambition. Already we are in discussions to see how the country can fast-track the implementation of setting up a number of engineer landfills. We are currently in a PPP arrangement as a country with a private sector institution known as Jospon that has established about 16 waste plants across the country. We want to see how that can be fast-tracked so that that is included in NDCs, and then we can monitor and see how that can lead to a reduction of methane in country.
Okay, Peter, we'll come back to this. Thank you. Charlotte, so essentially we're talking largely about the developing world here and the situation there, but as Peter said, everybody's got waste. And so this isn't, with biogas, it's not just a developing country opportunity, if I can put it that way. It's just as much an opportunity in the United Kingdom or the United States as it is in Uganda or, you know, another country, right? So is that correct? And that it needs to be understood as well, that it's a developed country opportunity as well as a developing country opportunity.
Well, the developed world has already been developing a very strong biogas sector, and the opportunity here now really is to take the experience and the learnings from the more developed world and to share those with the developing world, so that to facilitate the developing world to, in some ways, leapfrog the more developed world, because that learning is there. We have 5 years to meet the global methane pledge, and recycling our organic waste would deliver half of the pledge. So this is actually something that's really critical. The question is, how do we make this happen in 5 years' time? How are we going to build hundreds of thousands of biogas, biomethane plants around the world in 5 years? So we have to think completely differently. We have to think as if we are on a war zone, and we have to put in place action plans to make this happen. And one of the biggest challenges is that we are talking about a circular economy process, the circular economy of organic waste. We're talking about the need to involve stakeholders, multiple stakeholders, from waste pickers, farmers, grid operators, sanitation treatment experts, government, multiple government departments, all of whom need to have their interests aligned towards actually what is a very exciting vision of a huge economic opportunity that can create very valuable, useful jobs for so many people. And the way to do that is to take the learnings from the developed world. We have developed a regulatory framework, an international AD certification scheme, using the learnings from the first world that can then be adapted on a country-by-country process to ensure that there is an enabling environment in every country. We don't have time for every country to develop the policies, regulations and standards that from afresh.
Yeah.
We have to get that enabling environment in place ASAP, and that's why we came up with a standardized regulatory environment that can be adopted now, albeit adapted to local circumstances. Every country is different, but taking that will take far less time to enact and enable than it would do starting from scratch.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like an absolute no-brainer, right? And I presume that the costs of, there must be different sizes of biogas plants. There must be quite small ones for personal use, perhaps, or at least for a family's use, and ones that are bigger for larger groups and communities and things like that. And probably there are even citywide ones somewhere. Yeah, I'm not an expert on biogas, so I'm learning and I'm enjoying doing that. But I mean, cost-wise, it's relatively cost-effective to do this. I mean, are we all agreed that biogas is a cost-effective method of using this and creating this energy? So, okay, then the big question really is, I'm just checking the time right now, we've got 5 minutes 40. What do we want the COP to do about waste and also about biogas? What do we want the governments here to internalize? Can they do something for this sector here? So, Ashar, I've asked you a lot, but I'll start with you first, and then I'm going to go to this lady here, and this gentleman here.
So you're right. The most important thing is for countries to include the recycling and treatment of organic waste in their nationally determined contributions, and to make that commitment to deliver that recycling by 2030, and to enact a plan to do that as soon as possible. Ideally, as I say, including the regulatory framework and international AD certification scheme that we've already developed that can make available to them. If it's in the plan, in the NDC, sorry, they will have to enact a plan. So that is actually absolutely the action we want them to take.
And the plans are getting better than the plans that were done for Paris. That's what Achim Steiner, the head of the United Nations Development Programme, told me in an interview the other day. The plans are getting better. They're not perfect, but they are getting better. And investors can also see there's something to do. Tell me, what would you like?
The plans are getting better, definitely. We're seeing this. Yesterday there was the Global Methane Pledge Ministerial, and there was a specific declaration led by Chile, bringing together several countries in Latin America, where they announced their commitment to include the waste sector in their NDC. So these sort of declarations, these sort of commitments are very positive. They definitely show commitment that the waste sector is getting included in the NDCs. This is the first positive step. Still, it needs to see how it's going to be implemented in the practice. Because the waste sector not only needs to be included, also there has to be more definition and more criteria about what kind of solutions are going to be financed. And here we need to be aligned with environmental justice principles to make sure that the solutions are in the upstream of the waste hierarchy, that is prevention, reuse, source separation of organic waste, so that we can do this compost, we can do this biogas. Otherwise, these solutions are not going to be possible. We have to make sure that waste pickers are included, that the solutions put waste pickers at the front line. We have to make sure that the finance reaches the local level. The local organizations need to be included in the decision making. And all of these things need to be included in the NDC. So including the waste sector in NDCs, definitely. And we need to take one step further, making sure that there's alignment with environmental justice principles and making sure that there is finance. Otherwise, We will not be able to implement, and we will miss the opportunity to really meet the climate goal that we are here for.
Liana, looking at this then, I mean, looking at you're based in Jakarta, I presume, and I mean, there's obviously national government, and there's obviously local government, and there's obviously, there may be some NGOs, and there may be some overseas development support from time to time. And how do we thread all these organizations together to give waste pickers in Jakarta, and by default the rest of the world, proper jobs, proper livelihoods, and a chance to be part of the economy which they're actually contributing to without being recognized?
Okay, so there's no, I think, silver bullet for this problem. So every country has like different condition, and I think we, like, every country needs to, because there are many sources of waste. So for Indonesia, for example, we have agricultural waste, we have also municipal waste. So for big projects such as like biogas, maybe you may deal B2B, right, without involving community or waste picker. But if you're dealing with municipal waste, then you need to involve the community, because the source of waste are from there, right? So involving a waste picker, a community would be like the most efficient in terms of cost and also in terms of result. So I think every country needs to map that first, and the government also needs to call it like a strategy in terms of not only activities but also financing, because at the moment probably like B2B can be handled by banks or MDBs, but for municipal waste, then the government should take in charge of it and focus their financing there. So and provide support for the waste picker, because like in Indonesia and Brazil, the condition is different. So in Brazil, there are some municipal governments. Also, just to answer your first question, so the responsibility of waste handling mostly in the municipal level.
Yeah.
And in Brazil, some of the municipals already recognize waste picker cooperatives, and
like
they already
Sao Paulo, for example.
yeah,
I
and
think.
they also have involved them, like giving them contract to handle like public waste facilities. But in Indonesia, it's totally different. So that's why we suggest maybe they can also follow what Brazil has done.
So Peter, I'm giving you it's not good for gender balance, but I'm giving you the last word here. Just briefly, there's something about credits you wanted to mention that was happening at the COP. Sorry, just briefly. Credits, you were saying?
Carbon credits. It's absolutely essential that we valorize methane abatement by linking to carbon markets.
Okay. Peter, you can wrap up here. So tell me, are you going to follow all the ideas of these fantastic ladies here and implement them in Ghana tomorrow?
Certainly, yes. Very good examples to learn as a country. So we are looking at all the issues that have been raised, the business model, how to look at institutional arrangements, how to look at infrastructure and all of that. But I think that the discussions here on waste should be taken like the discussions has always been on oil and gas. That is what we need to do, because I say oil and gas is limited to a number of countries. But when it comes to waste, every country generates waste. So we need to take the discussions around waste as serious as we have done with oil and tie that to all the other aspects of the discussions, be it just transition, be it finance, be it capacity building, technology transfer, all the various components, Article 6, as it has been said. Because for us, most of the proposals we have received under Article 6 are coming from the waste sector, So we need to tie the discussions around waste with the other aspects of the discussions around the COP. And that is the only way we can promote this idea of trying to integrate waste management into the NDCs and actually realizing projects on the ground.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good wrap up. So, I think that was a very interesting discussion. I think the viewers will now know more about biogas than they ever knew before, I'm absolutely sure. Fascinating work that you're doing on the economic valorization of what these people are actually doing. Wonderful that you're championing the cause of the 20 million waste pickers around the world, and that Chile is put a flag in the sand on that, and that you also in Ghana have too. I think many of us want to see the end of seeing small children in smoky environments with hazardous metals drifting in the air, and see them in school, but see the older ones with proper waste jobs that they can feed their family and have a perspective for their future, whilst at the same time generating lots of biogas to avoid the methane going into the atmosphere. So thank you very much indeed, and let's move on.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we are. I thought it was getting serious, but then he posted this story like 5 minutes ago.
Weird.
That's so toxic. Like, who is she? Is she one of his friends? He's never mentioned her. Who is she?
I don't feel so good.
Welcome to this session on exponentially scaling climate solutions to phase out fossil fuels. And it's brought to you by the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. And with me in the studio, I'm joined by 4 gentlemen here with me, and also 2 people on Zoom. So let me introduce the team here. Johan Falk, you're a CEO and co-founder of Exponential Roadmap Initiative. And next to you is Henrik Tegnér, you're EVP Strategy and Sustainability at AFRY. And then we have Niklas Kaskela, Public Affairs Manager at Oatly. And last but not least, Hugh Garnett, Senior Program Manager, Real Assets, IIGCC. And with me on Zoom, I have in the studio in Stockholm, I have Johan Mandarek Roinonen, you're Head of Sustainability at Stegra, formerly known as H2 Green Steel. Good to see you, Johan. And also next to you on the Zoom frame here is Priya Bullar, COO and co-founder of Plan Boo. So welcome, Priya. Terrific to have you join us too. So let's start by asking Johan Falk a few questions to set the scene here. We all know that we need to phase out fossil fuels, so we need to do it quickly. But how about the importance of scaling climate solutions? Can you please say a few things about this?
Yes, science is very clear. We should halve emissions by 2030 and protect nature and move towards net zero. But we all know that we are not on track. And one of the reasons for that is that the solutions we need to shift out the fossil economy, they are not scaling sufficiently fast. We do have solutions like renewable energy, electrical vehicles, which are following this exponential trajectory and which has passed the tipping point. But we have a number of solutions we had to take over the tipping point and shift the curves to the left. So it's incredibly important that we don't just focus on the down curves, but actually the up curves.
Thank you, Johan.
Yes.
You have developed a framework to qualify these climate innovations and solutions. Why have you done that?
It's so important that the solution companies get sufficient recognition, both by financiers, by society, as well as by customers. So that is one of the reasons. It's also important over time that the large transformative companies start to set science-aligned targets to scale up climate solutions. All targets are around cutting emissions so far. So that is the reason why we developed this particular climate solutions framework, because it's also about integrity. If we should be able to do this, we need to have a firm and strict framework, so actually companies can qualify their solutions according to this particular framework.
Speaking of frameworks, you have also developed another framework. It's a framework, or it's rather more of a matrix for professional service providers. How does this work?
Yeah, that's right, because companies providing services like consultancy services, advertising services, engineering services, so think about it, their scope 1 and 2 and 3 emissions are normally quite insignificant, very important. They need to reduce towards net zero, but their major impact actually comes from which type of customers they serve and what is the purpose of the project. So we actually launched this particular matrix as a strategic tool for companies actually to apply, to transform their portfolio to align with the 1.5 ambition.
So Johan, why do we need different frameworks? Can you tell us a bit more about this, please?
Yes, going back again to the first category where we're talking about specific products. This particular framework, the requirement to qualify as a climate solution is basically aligned with the global carbon law from Johan Rockström. So it basically states that a product need to have at least 50% lower footprint than the market average solution. Preferably much more, which we will hear from Stegra, that you actually might be down at 80-90%, of course. And over time you need to still reduce your footprint to be under that particular line. It also need to follow key guardrails in order to protect nature and so on. So that's absolutely essential. So that's the first group. The second group we talked about is enabling services, which requires other type of tools. And the third is about companies and solutions which remove carbon and protect nature. So there are basically 3 categories which can be where we can categorize solutions as climate solutions.
Well, thank you very much for setting the stage here, Johan Falk. Let's now open up the conversation and include also the people on Zoom, of course. So I'd like to start with Johan Mandarek from the Stockholm studio. Would like to highlight each of your solutions here, because we are indeed talking about solutions. So Johan Mandarek, could you please share with the audience here a few thoughts on the Stegra solution?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. So Stegra, formerly known as H2 Green Steel, is a company founded just 4 years ago, and where our purpose is to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries. And we do that by really at scale producing green hydrogen, green iron, and green steel. And we have our first giga project in Sweden, up in the northern part of Sweden, in Boden, where we're currently building a 2.5 million ton green steel plant. And so the green steel that we're producing will abate up to 95% of CO2 compared to conventional steel.
That's massive.
And we will be ready in 2026.
It's quite impressive indeed, it is. Thank you very much, Johan. So Niklas, you go next. What is your climate solution, and where are you at in scaling it?
Yes, so I'm representing Oatly here, and Oatly is the world's largest oat-based drink company, and we've been a front runner in scaling plant-based solutions that can replace animal-based food. We know that the food system is causes, or about 1/3 of our global emissions is linked to the food system, and a vast majority of those emissions come from animal-based products. So we really need to do something about that. And I think Oatly is not about minimizing harm, but actually maximizing positive impact, how we can switch consumers to a more healthy, to a more climate and environmentally friendly option. So like we heard here earlier, it's not about being less bad, it's about being more good. And I think our biggest impact comes from converting people away from those products that are not only harmful for the planet, but quite often for our health as well, towards better options.
Well, thank you very much, and it's fantastic. I've been at several COPs now, and initially you couldn't get oat milk anywhere, and now they're everywhere.
Yeah, and
Not always your brand, but it's still, I mean, you're pushing for change here, and you're a big part of that.
I've
so
had to had some
this is-
coconut milk
yeah,
here,
yeah.
unfortunately. It's pretty good.
Actually,
but I have
yeah.
to say one thing, that this is only the second COP where food is on the agenda, or there's a specific thematic day
Sure.
for food. So I think we're quite late to the game here when it comes to food.
So we need to work hard.